All right, we're recording. So for everyone who's listening to this recording, this is Eric Moeller, of course, the host of the Airbnb Mastery Summit, CEO of Hometel, and then also I run the Facebook group Airbnb Profit Club. I wanted to go ahead and record this this call that I'm having with my good buddy Darren Pettyjohn. He's the CEO and founder of Proper Insurance. But he is doing some really, really interesting things. You guys definitely heard him speak on the Airbnb Mastery Summit, and his company was a sponsor to the summit as well. So major fan of what they're doing. But I wanted to record this call because he has so much going on, and I am getting a lot of questions from my community about insurance on the master lease side, on the investment side, property management side. So I figure I would just make a call to Darren and have him drop his knowledge and experience. So yeah, Darren, I appreciate your time. If you can, why don't you just kind of introduce to everybody what it is that you're doing and what's happening in the insurance world.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here, Eric, of course. Busy and to the listeners who had called in to Proper Insurance to get quotes and just talk about their insurance situations, we did get quite a few leads from that mastery.
Very nice.
So we thank you for calling in. But it's as far as the insurance is concerned for these short-term rentals. I would say awareness of owners knowing that they need some type of specialty insurance is on the rise. We've had this program going for 3 years now, but literally month after month, it's kind of the snowball effect. Once people start talking about it, it just continues to grow, and it's with good reason. Large domestic insurance carriers are slow to adapt, and there's just continues to be a lot of confusion in the industry about how to properly address this exposure of short-term renting. So really the only news to report here is that we've got a great program, and we're just continuing to grow and educate people literally one phone call at a time.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah. So we're getting a lot of reach out, especially in the Airbnb Profit Club Facebook group. We're getting a lot of people that are now jumping on the master lease model. So that's, people are leasing houses, condos, apartments, staging it, and then essentially subletting it back out through Airbnb. So we're getting a lot of, I'm just noticing that niche is just starting to explode. And that's, of course, my niche as well. Can you just touch on that real quick and, talk about what the programs that you have in place do? I know we covered this on the Airbnb Mastery Summit, but if you could just kind of go through that again, and then of course the cost. I know it's so cost effective what your programs are for investors to take these on, to take on those insurance policies.
It is, and I'm just thinking now the easiest way to explain it. Insurance is so complicated to begin with, so I really like to use examples. So let's just think this through on what an example would be that could resonate with your listeners. So let's say there's someone who owns a home, and they don't stay at their home very often, and they are going to rent it out to one of your customers or our customers, and then that person is going to turn around and run a Airbnb business out of that home.
Right.
So let's use an example. Let's use something different. Let's say you want to rent that home and you want to run your woodworking business out of that home. It's got good square footage. It's got a garage. It has a front door where people can come and visit you, and you're going to set up a woodworking shop in the garage, and you are literally going to rent this space to run a business out of that space. It's really no different than running an Airbnb business. And so the word I keep using is business, because traditionally, if you're going to rent someone's home and sign a year lease, you are going to call Allstate or Nationwide or Geico or whoever, and you're going to buy a renter's policy. They've been around forever. Very standard policy, HO4 renters. And that renter's policy is going to cover your stuff. So you move in and you have a couch and a TV and a bed. And if the place burns down, you need insurance for that. It's also going to cover your personal liability. So if you are walking on the street and you trip someone and they sue you, or someone comes to your house and they slip at the front door, it's going to protect you. So very simple insurance. But now that you have someone who is leasing the property and then turning around and running a business from that property, you just simply can't ignore the exposure and buy a renter's policy. Because a lot of your people carry a renter's policy. I'm renting a place, I get a renter's policy.
Right.
The problem is, if someone is injured in there and they're staying there for a week, or there's some property damage or whatever it is, you're going to be very hard pressed to find an insurance company that's going to come and pay those claims. And actually, something we can get into in a minute is there's finally some press coming out on large domestic carriers denying these insurance claims.
Right.
So you need to buy a business policy, and that's what we sell. And I'm not saying proper insurance is the only option for that, but you would buy a business policy from us. It would protect your stuff. It would give you the liability. It would give you the income coverage. And then a key component is you would add the owner of the home onto the insurance policy as additionally insured. So if they got pulled into a lawsuit. But that's how you have to break it down, and just keep it simple. You need a business insurance policy for the Airbnb business that you are running.
And this is in replace of the renter's policy.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Now, where you might run into some confusion, and this is why I say we educate people literally one call at a time. We have an entire sales floor that covers the entire U.S. and the phone's ringing all day. But you will run into some situations where, same example, someone owns the home and they're going to rent it to you, but they already carry a landlord policy on them. And they say, well, I already have insurance. You need to get additional insurance. And is there any way we can get a policy that covers us both? And the answer to that question is yes. So we sell our policy for master lease situations two ways. The first way is the owner keeps that landlord policy. The house burns down, his landlord policy replaces the home. And then you buy a commercial renter's policy from us, a business renter's policy. Great, works perfectly fine. Or the person who's doing the master lease can actually buy a full business policy from us that covers the building as well, and simply adds the owner on as a loss payee and additionally insured. And it's one policy. It covers both the owner and the master lease lessor. And a lot of times they'll split the costs for the insurance. Sometimes the landlord will just pay for it or the owner, because it's similar in price to what he has already. Or, there's different options. So for your listeners, when they're looking at a place to master lease, they want to tread lightly and say, how am I going to deal with the insurance situation? And the best thing to do, honestly, is just call us and tell us what the situation is. Hey, I've got a guy, he's really nervous about insurance. He's asking all these questions. What's a game plan? Because ultimately I want the master lease and I want this to go smoothly, and we can facilitate those phone calls and get through that situation easily.
That's interesting. Okay, so there's a couple of different options here. So it's obviously, regardless what you're doing, there's a policy for the investor to step in and lease that property, pull out that. The first policy, what type of costs are we looking at?
For the first policy, which we basically call a commercial renter's policy, the annual cost for it is $450 to $500. Just depends on the state with taxes and fees, but plus or minus, it's $500 annually is what it would cost.
Right. Right.
So $50 a month.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So $50 a month. Yeah. Yeah. So anyone who is leasing a property and then subletting back out through Airbnb just needs to buy that. I mean,
You
that's
have
so
to.
cost effective.
You absolutely have to. And one thing I want your listeners to hear about is this insurance claim that was denied, which we can talk about in a second.
Yeah.
But so that's if the renter buys it and then the owner keeps their landlord policy, because the owner of the home, and we're just using a single family home as an example, but a condo is no different, apartment, etc. So yes, that's one way to do it. But the other way to do it is the landlord, the person who owns the home, is likely paying, say, $1,200 a year annually for their landlord policy, and then you've got your commercial condos, so call it $1,700. So what the master re-renter, your customer, could do is just buy a full commercial package policy for probably $1,200 to $1,700 annually, and the landlord would cancel their landlord policy.
Interesting.
Again, that is a little, that works a little, it depends. I mean, we have people that call in and the landlords love it. And they go, well, explain it to me, and it works.
Yeah, it sounds like so there's a couple of tricky I'm thinking as the master leaser on the investor side, there's so much convincing that needs to be done for landlords to approve this business model. So I see that
Correct.
being another hurdle, saying like, hey, I'm going to buy an insurance policy, you cancel yours, this covers it. I see that being, when the master leaser sits down with the landlord and presents them the landlord package, that should be an option. And there's like, regardless, we're going to get this insurance policy and it's going to cover X, Y, and Z. But this second policy is in replacement of your current insurance policy. Right? So
yes.
I would present both offers, saying at a bare minimum we got X, Y, and Z, but we could bring you on. What is the benefit for? What is the difference between the two? The benefit for the landlord if they go with the larger policy. What's the name of these policies again?
Yeah, the policy that the owner has already in place is a DP3 landlord policy. That's already in place. That house burns down, it needs to be rebuilt. No, it's kind of like a homeowner's policy, except it's for a landlord policy, right? Now here's the problem though. That guy who owns the home, who has a landlord policy, what happens if the short-term rental guest comes into the home, stays for 3 days, throws a cigarette in a trash can, and burns the home down? The guy who owns the home is going to file a claim with his landlord carrier, right, to rebuild the house. The landlord carrier says, how did the fire start? And he says, from this guest. And they go, what do you mean guest? You don't have a tenant in there? Well, yeah, I have a tenant in there, but that tenant then re-rents the property out. They could actually deny that claim if they wanted to with the business activity exclusion.
Interesting.
That's a problem. So
yeah,
what happens at that point is the landlord would likely sue the re-renter and say, listen, this is on you. You need to rebuild my house, right? So then the re-renter would call us to file a liability claim because now he or she has property damage that they're liable for. And our liability coverage would actually kick in for that, up to $1 million to rebuild it. But it can turn into a mess very quickly.
Sure.
So really, fundamentally, the best way to do it is to have one insurance policy which covers all parties. But again, that's why your listeners have to tread lightly, because you might have a landlord that just says, I want to see proof of liability and me added as additionally insured. And we all get it. These things don't happen every day, and they buy the commercial renter's policy and move on with life. But if they really want to get educated and develop a long-term relationship with
Right.
the landlord, they can say, listen, there's this option and it's best for all parties involved. So
Yeah.
tricky
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It sounds like that's a long-term relationship type of approach.
Correct.
Regardless having the regardless you're insuring the policy, but if you're working with an investor who sounds like, in my mind, that has multiple different properties, and it seems like it's going to be a long-term relationship for the landlord and the master leaser, I would definitely approach for the second policy to cover the entire property.
Correct. Exactly. You're exactly right.
Interesting.
Well, I
Okay.
can tell you, Eric, we've had a lot of those conversations though with landlords and master leasers on a three-way call. And I mean, depending on how you want to approach the owner, I want to say it's helped seal the deal because the
Right.
owner says, I get it 100%. Everybody's covered. This seems great to me. Let's move forward. So it's kind of one of those things you keep in your back pocket if the conversation escalates to that. If not, keep it simple. Buy a commercial renter's policy, $500 annually. The owner gets added as additionally insured. Your stuff and income is covered, and you move on with life. I'd say 9 out of 10 go that way.
Got it. Yeah. So we have somebody in our Profit Club group that I believe it was last month, the month prior. They they rented to a Airbnb guest. So the profile was so this individual was renting the house for his son for a couple of days, and that son was a meth addict and completely destroyed the house. The cops had to go there and get him out of the property, all of that. And she was telling me that it took her, besides all the damage inside the house, it took her about 3 or 4 weeks to completely renovate the property again and get it to renting condition again. So, and what she was telling me, she's like, hey, I won't be able to continue this business, and I might have to back out of this lease because loss of income. So, does that
Now,
insurance policy cover any type of loss of income in situations like that?
yes. So option one, which let's just say the client went with option one, there is a section. Well, first off, yes, you can choose any limit you want for business income. So for that $500, the typical policy is $50,000 or $75,000 worth of content stuff, 30 or 40,000 of business income, and then the million of commercial liability. So if they were a client of ours, they would have called in to file an insurance claim for their stuff. Now, here's the kicker. If, let's say, that meth addict also punched a bunch of holes in the wall,
Mm-hmm.
that re-renter now can apply their contents coverage to the holes in the wall as long as the lease specifies as such, which most of them do. So back up to that person who master leased that property, I guarantee in that lease that they signed with the owner, it said any damage above XYZ you're going to be responsible for. And our policy would not only replace her stuff, her couch, her TV, but also patch up the walls and provide coverage for the actual building, the walls and toilets and light fixtures and stuff like that, in addition to the contents.
Right.
So yes, I mean, we see stuff like that. And then as a result of a covered loss, the way business income works is in the event there's a covered cause of loss, vandalism, theft, broken water pipe, fire, wind and hail damage, et cetera, et cetera. In the event of a loss, if your property is uninhabitable, unrentable, then the business income kicks in and pays you for your lost business income, aka lost rents. Exactly.
And so they would. Is that on existing bookings that had to be canceled, or is it projected out projected out like, hey, this time frame, we typically make X amount on
We do
Airbnb?
it. We do it both ways, and in fact, one of the testimonials we have on our website and on BBB was a guy who has just bought 3 cabins in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, before the fires of last December, and he
Mm-hmm.
hadn't rented them out at all. And he called in and actually talked to me, and it kind of got escalated up to me, and he said, listen, how is this all going to play out? And I said, listen, you bought the business income. Do me a favor, go on VRBO or Airbnb and find 3 comparable properties, send them over, and we'll just write you a check. So the way our policy, in which we did, and he wrote us a great testimonial, so he got policy limits. So the way it works is, the language of our policy says, in the event of a loss, business income, etc., and I custom wrote it actually, it comes down and it says the likely revenue that you would have earned. So the whole interpretation of the policy comes down to the word likely. It is not defined beyond that. So the reason I did that is this is different than any other insurance policy out there. And we had to coach up our adjusters when we started having claims saying, well, what does likely mean? It's not,
Right.
it's not defined. So we're fair. We say, what's the likely revenue you would have earned? Well, I've been renting it for 3 years, and every December, here's my tax history. I make 10 grand a month. Okay, that one's easy. Well, how about the guy who just bought his property and said, well, my realtor told me I was likely going to make $3,000 a month from renting these out. And so we just did what was fair. And at the end of the day, you're paying a premium. You're paying money for that amount of coverage, 10, 20, 30, 50,000, whatever it is. You're paying a premium. It's not our job or our intention to screw you out of the money you've been paying. What's the likely revenue?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, that's the way that we did it.
Yeah, that's pretty good too. Like even in those situations, I mean, working with AirDNA, getting reports and actually breaking down the numbers, I could see that coming into place and helping somebody out who's in that situation.
Absolutely. I want to give you one other example though, because I'm very proud of this. I had a guy in New Orleans. He also wrote a testimonial for us. I think it's on Facebook. He had a bunch of, he had some artwork in his property that was stolen in Louisiana. And he called in to file an insurance claim for theft. We paid his theft claim. And then he said, I can't rent out my property. And I was like, what do you mean you can't rent out your property? And he said, all my pictures and everything on my property, it's kind of a schwanky, very cool hipster place. He's like, one of the reasons people book my property is because of all this cool artwork and all this stuff I have in my place. And I said, does the toilet work? Does the bed, it was defined as still rentable. You could still rent it. So I said, I'll tell you what, let's meet in the middle. Why don't you lower your price on Airbnb, keep renting it. When your guests book, tell them in a note that you've gone through a claim and you're replacing the artwork, etc. You'll still get bookings, and we'll meet in the middle, and we'll pay you the difference in the lost bookings until you get all of your artwork back up and your property fully where you want it. And trust me, I asked him too. I said, if I do this for you, you're going to write us a testimonial. And he said, of course. And he wrote one. But again, likely revenue, that's a really tough spot, because it's like, you guys are based on reviews. We know how important reviews are. And he said, listen, Darren, I can't book this because if people come, they're going to say the pictures didn't look like, or the place didn't look like the pictures, the walls were blank, etc. You get the idea. But we met him in the middle, and I said, listen, let's split the difference, keep renting it. And then it took him about a month to get all the artwork and everything he wanted back up, but we did that as well. So we're very fair. We
got it. People have options. That's great. It's really good. To wrap all this up, I would love for you to, last time we talked, we talked a little bit about the Airbnb, quote unquote, protection insurance policy that they have. And then I know HomeAway has a protection guarantee in there as well. Has anything changed? Can you give like a quick, 60-second update on what those things are about and kind of educate everybody on the pros and cons of that? Probably
Yeah,
need a
again,
little bit more than 60 seconds, but yeah,
yeah, no,
anything you can share.
I can do it quick, and I'll keep it simple. I mean, let's be real. First of all, there's two. There's Airbnb host guarantee, which is property damage. So, like that
Yeah.
guy you were talking about, well, ask her. She should submit a claim to Airbnb for the meth addict damage.
Uh,
That's a guarantee. They guarantee $1 million of property damage from any guest. But on the website, it says that this is not insurance. And I encourage your listeners to just Google Airbnb insurance claims and get to page 2, 3, 4, and 5 in Google. And I'm not here to tell you they're never going to pay a damage claim, but you can do the research yourself and determine for yourself that nothing in life is free. I mean, it's just the reality of it. So that's the
right.
property damage. Then you're correct. Airbnb and HomeAway both. HomeAway, I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, they announced their host protection or renters protection liability, etc. So everybody gets $3 million of liability insurance for every booking. With that one is it has a lot of exclusions. It doesn't cover personal and advertising injury, sexual acts, different things. So the coverage is stripped down a bit versus what like we sell and other carriers will sell. But there's no documentation. I mean, I'm sorry, but we're built in a world of online reviews. I have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. I'm very proud of that. It's tough, man. People give reviews and stuff. Don't you think that if someone was actually injured at an Airbnb and they sent an email there and they stepped in and defended them in court and paid a settlement, that there would be some kind of review or something out there that this thing has responded? Again, you need to get into page 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the reviews on Google. And to my knowledge, there's never been any documentation that anything's ever happened with it. I don't know. I mean, if it was me, is it worth $50 a month to have an insurance policy with your name on it?
100%.
No
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I love Airbnb. I love home.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, they're great, but it's like, I don't know.
They're not an insurance company, though. I understand it, and I can understand having that many units and that much turnover and guests coming through those platforms. I can understand the challenges that come along with that. So, yeah, as a host, as an investor, property owner, master leaser, it's like, those policies are there for backup, but definitely want to create some type of structure and security with an additional policy on top of it, for sure.
Well, before it, exactly, because I think it says it's not primary coverage as well, which means if you've exhausted all your limits and, you have to read the contract. And this leads me into one other thing here. Insurance, and we can end on this, is so important, or unless you have other questions, but
No, it's perfect.
Insurance is a contract. It's no different than a contract you sign for employment, a contract that you sign to lease a property. I mean, it is a contract. And in that contract, it is going to tell you exactly what's covered and what's not covered. Just like in our contract, how do you determine business income? It's not defined. It says likely revenue. So we could argue about that all the way to Superior Court. How do you define likely? Okay, but it's going to tell you what is and is not covered. There's a recent lawsuit out in California where a gal, and it's a big one. It's all over if you search it. I won't do the name drop because I don't know, but you can find it. But she was insured with one of the largest insurance carriers in the country, and she did Airbnb in her guest house. She's been doing it for years. And a tree fell on her guest house, causing $100,000 in damage, smashed her guest house. The insurance, now this had nothing to do with an Airbnb guest. This was a tree falling, which is a covered cause of loss in all insurance, essentially. They denied the claim because they found her listing on Airbnb. They said she was in violation of her contract. that it excludes business activity in the rental of her property to others, and they denied her. They just flat denied the claim. She got a lawyer and she's suing them, and it's in California District Court, Superior District Court right now. And so based on that contract that she had with her insurance carrier, it said they can deny the claim based on the contract. I don't know how it's gonna end up, but until bleep hits the fan, you have no idea what's going on. And this is a great business for everybody, but you have to be insured. It's not worth the time and money to hire attorneys and do all of this not to have insurance in place. I'm talking rock solid insurance. You have to have it.
I couldn't agree more, man. Couldn't agree more. We do the same thing on all our properties, so for sure. So for everyone who is listening, why don't you give them your information on how they could find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Just the easiest thing to do is call into our office 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, Mountain Standard Time. Because again, we love talking to people on the phone. It may be a situation where we can't help you, or maybe we can. I mean, most of the time we can, but you just have to block off the time and say, you know what, I'm going to call in. I'm going to spend 20 minutes and get this insurance thing figured out. So the phone number to call is 888-631-6680. And if you don't want to call in, you can do a quick online quote, which kind of starts the process, and then one of our sales reps will actually reach out to you. And it's right on our homepage. It says click here, 5 minutes to get a quote, and you can put in your information there. And the domain is proper, PROPER, .insure, INSURE. So there's no .com. It's proper .insure.
I love it. Well, I appreciate the information. Appreciate the time as always. I'm sure I'm going to be reaching out to you again next week sometime regarding my properties. But yeah, man, I appreciate it. And yeah, looking forward to seeing how all this plays out in the near future.
Yeah, good luck with all the success. Keep building the group, and appreciate the time, Eric.
Thank you very much, Darren. I appreciate it.
All right, bye.